Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Our teacher today is John Martin. We welcome John Martin. John serves on the Spirit Rock Teaching Council and the Governing Teaching Council for the Spirit Rock Meditation Center. He has many years' experience as a volunteer in hospice at both Shanti and with the Zen Hospice Project. He leads regular Monday night meditation for a group in the Castro, and he leads retreats focusing on Vipassana, Metta, and LGBTQI themes. So we're happy to have John with us today.
Thank you, David. Happy to be back with Gay Buddhist Fellowship and see so many folks I know and many folks really known for many years and hold in my heart. So today going to speak about karma. And the word karma was showing up on the newspaper, front pages of some of the newspapers I was reading in reference to Donald Trump contracting COVID. So I thought we'd explore this topic and share the Buddha's teachings on karma. A lot of misperceptions in our culture on what karma is and isn't. I thought I'd start by sharing a story from the time of the Buddha. It's the story of Angulimala that some of you may have heard before. Angulimala was a mass murderer. He killed 999 people, and was said that he kept a bone from all of his victims, a finger bone, and had a necklace of those 999 victims. And he was under the severe misimpression that by killing 1,000 people, that would allow him to become enlightened. And Angulimala had decided that the Buddha was going to be his 1,000th victim. And Angulimala started chasing the Buddha, and the Buddha stopped, but Angulimala still couldn't reach the Buddha. And Angulimala called to the Buddha to stop, and the Buddha spoke. And the Buddha said, "Angulimala, I have stopped forever. I have forsworn cruelty and hatred. But you have no restraint toward things that breathe. So that is why I have stopped and you have not." And Angulimala was so moved by the peace and serenity of the Buddha, by hearing the Buddha's words, that Angulimala decided to become a monk, renouncing the violence that he'd been following for many, many years. And Angulimala, despite all of the harm he had caused, all the lives he'd taken, realized complete liberation. Pretty amazing that any of us can be on this path toward awakening, toward freeing our heart from all confusion. And Angulimala is one who killed 999 people, that he could still purify his heart and mind to realize the highest freedom. But he still realized the results of his actions, and that when he went on alms rounds, some of the townspeople would throw stones and rocks at him. Some of the townspeople forgave him, or at least intended to forgive him, for killing family members, killing loved ones. Others did not forgive him, so threw stones and rocks at him. At one point, it was said Angulimala looked toward the Buddha pleadingly for help. And the Buddha said, "Bear it, Angulimala, it's your karma. This is the result, in effect. This isn't the result of your past actions." So it's an inspiring story to me because it does say that any one of us can purify our hearts and minds and realize a deeper peace and happiness. And this is an essential teaching of whatever form of Buddhist practice we're following. Key teaching is that while there is dukkha, there is the pain of being in the human body, of being subject to old age, sickness, and death, the pain of everything being impermanent, nothing of this material world to latch onto for lasting happiness whatsoever. That while there is this pain, there is the potential to be free of mental suffering. And that's what Angulimala realized. Free of the reactivity and contention with things as they are. When we make peace with things as they are, we open to the possibility of peace and ease in any moment. A peace that's not dependent on our health, on relationships, on our finances, even on the politics of the world. This is the radical teaching of the Buddha, this possibility of waking up. And we all benefit from this. We all have those times in our practice where we find peace in the middle of difficulties, benefits of practice that are arising. This story also highlights the law of karma. The law of karma is that actions have consequences without exception. That's the essential teaching of karma. It's not that someone deserves to be sick or have a problem. The essential teaching of karma is that actions have consequences without exception. Ruth Denison, great insight meditation teacher who died a few years ago, said that karma means you don't get away with nothing. Karma means you don't get away with nothing. And I felt this so powerfully in my practice at times over the years that every action matters. No one else may know some action we take, but it still has consequences. So karma is literally defined as the present moment, the present action. This moment is karma. It's resulting from past actions and past intentions and the present intention. So the Buddha put a great emphasis on karma. The Buddha said one of the five daily recollections that he had the monks and nuns practice with. One of the recollections is, I am the owner of my action, heir of my actions. Whatever I do, for good or for bad, I shall be the heir. So karma means actions have consequences without exception. And the karma as a present moment action means the present moment, just this moment, cannot be different than it is. There's no need to be into contention with this present moment. Maybe that we need to speak up and take action in the next moment. But the present moment can't be different than it is. One of my teachers for many years, Sylvia Borstein, who I know spoke several times over the years at GBF. I heard her speak one time at GBF. She says that when people ask her, how are you today? She replies, I couldn't be better. Regardless of how she feels, even if she's not feeling well, I couldn't be better. Because in that present moment, couldn't be different. Even if she's not feeling so hot, I could be better than I am. It's a statement of karma that recognizes the present moment can't be different than it is, a statement of equanimity that accepts things just as they are. So Donald Trump and COVID. Did Donald Trump contract? Was that karma? Well, every moment's karma. So of course there's karma in Donald Trump contracting COVID. And I use the analogy, it's like if we decided to go for every action having a consequence, if we decided to go for a walk today through the streets of San Francisco barefoot, there would be a consequence of those actions. Probably a good chance we'd come back with cuts on our feet. If we decide to go out in the world when we're all being told to wear masks and we interact with others without wearing a mask, we greatly increase our probability of contracting COVID. So there's a relationship. If we yell at somebody on the street, we're probably going to be the person who's might yell back at us, or we're going to feel a rattledness from losing our temper with someone who triggered us. So we can see that actions have consequences in this way. In the same way, there were consequences, perhaps, of Donald Trump not wearing a mask. But was there some bigger thing at play? Often in our society, karma is understood as, that's their karma. They must have done something really terrible to deserve that. The Buddha said no one except a Buddha can trace all of the lines of karma that result in this present moment. And in fact, the Buddha said you would go crazy trying to figure it all out. It's enough to understand that actions have consequences. In my own practice, in my own life, it's pointless to go back in time and figure out how could this action 10 years ago or what actions in the past resulted in the present circumstance. No point in that. Enough to know that actions have consequences. And a key part of karma is recognizing that there is an intention. There's an intention before every action. So when we end our time together this morning, you hit the leave button on your screen. There'll be an intention to hit that button. There will be the intention to stand up, the intention to walk. There's always an intention before an action. In the Buddha's practice, a key element on the Eightfold Path is purifying our intentions. Wise intention. Cultivating intentions of loving kindness, intentions of compassion, intention of acceptance, accepting things as they are. Letting go of attaching to things needing to be a particular way in this moment, just to accept things as they are. Or cultivating those wise intentions and letting go of the unskillful intentions of ill will or hatred, in effect replacing it with loving kindness, goodwill, metta. We're replacing intentions of cruelty and harming with the intention of compassion. And we're replacing the intentions of attachment or greed, of the attaching to things needing to be a particular way. I have to be perfectly healthy again to be happy. Or the elections have to go a particular way for me to be happy. We're letting go of attaching our happiness to outcomes. Letting go of that force of greed. We can still have preferences, but we let go of attaching our fundamental happiness to the outcome. So we're purifying our minds by purifying our intentions for kindness, compassion, letting go. The Buddha said all experience is preceded by mind, led by mind, made by mind. Speak or act with a corrupted mind, and suffering follows, as a wagon wheel follows a hoof of the ox. And it goes on to say, all experience is preceded by mind, led by mind, made by mind. Speak or act with a peaceful mind, and happiness follows, like a never-departing shadow. So when we purify our minds for the intentions for kindness, for compassion, for acceptance, or bring forth more happiness, ease, contentment into our lives and into the world for the benefit of other beings as well. So in my own practice, I noticed I like to walk every day. This is part of my COVID routine, is to clear the mind by getting out and doing a long walk. And I kept noticing, especially this summer, I'd feel aversion, see a lot of people without masks on, not being safe, and I feel a lot of ill will and anger and people not following the protocols, and started to bring in the practice. Seeing, there's anger, there's ill will. Can I, in effect, cultivate metta, cultivate kindness and friendliness? Recognize my own suffering. It's like this, I'm suffering, I'm tense, I'm upset. Feel the aversion and just drop in metta. Metta for myself, silently saying metta for the other person, even the person who isn't being as skillful in their actions as I might like. So it made it for a great practice to be out walking and still do that. I'm finding gradually, even though I would only remember a small percentage of the time when I feel triggered, to drop in the word metta, metta. It's started to clear the heart and mind so that I found myself getting less caught up in feeling that aversion or ill will when I go for my walks. So the Buddha said to pause, reflect before you take an action. What's the intention? Is there an intention of kindness, compassion, caring? The Buddha said, don't do harm to others. And then stop if you see yourself in the midst of taking an action causing harm. Last week, I wrote an email on a political subject I saw. And I wrote this right away after reading it in a newspaper, and I thought, well, this is really clear and sounds good. I pushed the send button right away, and I thought, well, that one comment I made about that one organization wasn't even personal to a person, to one particular person, but I kind of was harsh with this one organization, and I woke up in the middle of the night feeling like, oh, I really regret this. It was words written in anger. I could feel the rattleness of it. So I actually had the good fortune. I wrote to the person I had sent the email to and asked her, please don't share that email with others in her organization. Let me send a revised email. And she said, fortunately, she had not sent it along, so I was able to correct it. So sometimes we're able to make that correction. This is a story of someone who made that kind of correction. A story about John Lewis and Elwyn Wilson. I'm sure most of you know John Lewis, great civil rights leader. And he was a civil rights leader committed to nonviolence, just completely committed to non-harming, non-cruelty. From the time he first became a civil rights leader when he was only 19 years old. So I think it was 1961, he was in a Greyhound bus terminal in a whites-only seating area in a protest. And a member of the KKK, several members of the KKK came in and attacked Lewis and others. One of them was a man named Elwyn Wilson. And Lewis and his those who were in the protest didn't fight back. They were beaten and attacked. And years later, when Obama was elected president, so that's 48 years later, 47 years later, Elwyn Wilson, who had attacked John Lewis, was asked by a friend of his, where would you go if you died? And he said he'd go to hell for having caused that harm, having attacked others. And he decided he needed to go to his local newspaper, the Rock Herald in South Carolina, and express his regret and publicly say what he had done. And the newspaper reporter put it together that it was John Lewis who he had attacked, and allowed to Elwyn Wilson to make the connection to Lewis. And he met Elwyn Wilson traveled to D.C. to meet John Lewis, as a congressman, and asked for forgiveness. After that 48 years, he decided to ask for forgiveness. Lewis said it was the first time he ever had someone apologize to him for acts of violence. And Lewis said it's in keeping with the philosophy of nonviolence that we forgive. That's the way the movement was always about. It was always about having the capacity to forgive and move toward reconciliation. So Elwin Wilson felt the karmic consequences of his actions even 48 years later. He recognized the need to purify his heart, to open his heart to kindness and compassion, to be able to forgive himself and to ask for forgiveness. He felt the burden of that hatred. Amazingly, John Lewis, so committed to nonviolence, seemingly he never carried any hatred toward those who had caused him physical harm. He abused me, he attacked me, defeated me, robbed me. For those carrying on like this, hatred does not end. She abused me, attacked me, defeated me, robbed me. For those not carrying on like this, hatred ends. The heart of forgiveness. And these words from the Buddha, hatred is never healed by hatred. Hatred is healed by love alone. This is the eternal law. So it's inspiring that quote is like the quote I've been carrying for these last 4 years, to go back to again and again, to recognize that hatred in our society isn't going to go away by hatred. Meeting it with hatred, with anger, isn't going to be the cure. Meeting it with kindness, with love, compassion, speaking from a place of clarity, strength, coming out of that love, coming out of the acceptance that this present moment is just as it is, allows us to have the strength and courage of voice, and allows that is so apparent in someone like John Lewis, that love, courage, conviction that came forward from his strong intention of non-harming. So it's also true for our own practice. Hatred not healed by hatred. Hatred healed by love alone. So the inspiration for me is like to meet when I have a feeling, any feeling of comparing mine, not good enough, or something wrong in my life, some kind of self-judging. Often we're harshest with ourselves. To be able to meet that with kindness rather than meet that with aversion or ill will. I will often try and drop in the phrase, it's like this, and I care. So when I recognize that I'm caught up in reactivity in the mind, or maybe there's a painful body sensation, it's like this, and I care. To recognize the present moment as it is, just the way it is, and to bring forth some kindness and compassion for myself. So we can do that for others, we can do this for ourselves. If we let go of that reactivity to our experience, as Walt Whitman said, be curious, not judgmental. So we can be curious about our experience. We make the space to see how we get caught in reactivity, and we begin to change the habit patterns of the mind. So we meet those difficulties with kindness and compassion, rather than with harsh self-judgments. Kind of like we begin to make peace with ourselves and make peace with the world. So it's a great benefit of practice to be able to begin to meet with peace, with love, even the hatred we feel, the rage we might feel about what's going on with in our country. Not to deny those emotions, but to meet them fully with love and acceptance, and still have the deep intention to speak and act in the world from a place of love and compassion and not from hatred. A quote from Ram Dass: "Being peacefully in relationship to everything made me realize that my happiness isn't based on the situation being this way or that way. My happiness is one which embraces my sadness, and my love is one which embraces my own hate." A beautiful quote. Coming into peace with the way things are, even in our own hearts, even with our own experience. We're changing the habit patterns of mind and realizing the karmic benefits as we let go of the forces of ill will and hatred, not being at war, not acting and speaking from ill will and hatred. Bring forth compassion to suffering, rather than harsh self-judgments or perhaps a sense of bringing harm into the world. And we bring forward acceptance of this present moment just as it is, a sense of peace with this present moment just as it is. So again, from the Buddha, he attacked me, he abused me, attacked me, defeated me. For those not carrying on like this, hatred does not end. For those not carrying on like this, hatred ends. So we're purifying, in effect, we're purifying the karmic stream by cultivating intentions, these intentions of kindness, compassion, letting go, bring forth more ease and happiness in our lives. Purifying the karmic stream. In the Buddha's teachings, when the forces of greed, aversion, delusion are no longer present, there's no more rebirth. That's what the Buddha spoke about when the Buddha said, there's no more coming into being, no more rebirth. The forces of greed, aversion, delusion have completely been eliminated. So that's a great inspiration for practice. So I think I'll stop there, and I'd like to open it up for any comments or questions. I thought of going into groups, but I think I just open it up for comments and questions. And yes, Mark?
Good morning.
Good morning, Mark.
So as many people know, my ire, as far as the politics are concerned, are directed at Republican leadership and the enabling of what's happening inside the White House, and the real threat to our democracy and all those things. And I think about after the election, and hopefully everything goes the way I hope it goes, it's, this is my own take. I look at the Republican leadership, and I don't know how to, I'm going to use the word forgiveness. I mean, I don't know how to sort of say, the acceptance where I believe, at least, right or wrong, that, if you give it another chance, they will do this all over again. It's just all about power. This is my take on things. So if you could just say a few words about this, I didn't hear the word forgiveness used much. I heard it in the beginning of your story, at the beginning with the Buddha and all that. But when you're faced with that sort of situation where they're prepared to do harm, at least it's just my belief, when given the opportunity, they'll do that. And I'm talking more just to say, just my own attachment to just integrity, decency, honesty. I have a huge attachment to evidence and science and all those things that, a lot of folks, a lot of people not really, I feel like I'm getting off subject here a little bit, but that, all of those things are kind of wrapped into this. So Anyway, you can say a few words about that.
It's a great comment. And I think it's probably in most of our hearts, what's going on in the country, the hatred and the harm that's being actively caused to so many. My intention when I see that and I feel for our practice is we can feel the anger, the rage. We might feel that, and it can be a great source of energy. We can actually use that as an energetic force. But stay true to our practice of being present in the world in a peaceful, non-harming way. So still speaking up, taking action. And I think of the great leaders of the world, like Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela and Gandhi. They were fighting injustice and hatred and yet speaking words of love and saying they all had this common theme, we are not going to fall into hatred the way you fell into hatred. And it gave those leaders this clarity of voice. And even after Nelson Mandela became president of South Africa, he said, I am not going to do to you, the white people of South Africa, what you did to us. And I look at what he did with the truth and reconciliation process. Sometimes I wonder if that's what our country is going to have to go through to say all of the terrible things that probably haven't even become public yet. And look at what's been done to immigrants. And unbelievable. But I can't let that hatred, I don't want to fall into the hatred that others have fallen into. And it's a challenge for our practice to not fall into the hatred and I think violence that others are falling into. So I trust our own practice. I trust this practice of kindness, compassion, and then telling and speaking and acting on the truth. There's a great courage that can come forward, courage of the heart when we open to love and compassion. Just a few thoughts. I'm trying to speak directly from the Buddha's teachings, but also from my own heart, my own experience. Thank you. Others. So yeah, the Buddha, I'll just share a little bit more, is that the Buddha said all experience is made by mind, perceived by mind, led by mind. And he spoke about actions, or purifying actions of the body, of the speech, and of the mind. And in my own practice, I've been really watching that judgmental mind and aiming to purify the mind to not be so judgmental. And to recognize, like, when the self-judgments arise, it's a form of harming. And like, we wouldn't cause harm to another. Few of us would ever be cruel to another person knowingly. But sometimes we can be cruel most of all to our own selves, to be harsh with ourselves. And it can be a great practice just in sitting meditation, a way of practicing with the mind, with the heart, that when we feel restless or we feel a strong emotion that we don't like, rather than meeting it with aversion or pushing it away or denying it or judging ourselves harshly for feeling that, to meet it with kindness and compassion, to in effect say, I feel the suffering, I care. It really softens things up. It's really like we're taking care of ourselves wisely, to recognize what's present, to welcome it and not judge it. There's these phrases from Hawaiian tradition, the Ho'oponopono phrases, I like to bring into my own practice of the phrases. I'll make sure I get these exactly right. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. You feel a self-judgment. Maybe you're being harsh with the judgment of someone else, maybe someone in your life you care about. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. I say that silently to myself. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being harsh with myself. Please forgive me. The intention to let go of it, forgiving ourselves. Thank you. The acknowledgement. And I love you. The Buddha said, no one more deserving of our love and affection than we are ourselves. It's a good practice to bring in from time to time. I especially do this on retreat practice where I can more easily catch the judgments in the mind. Other reflections or questions? David.
Hey, John, can you say a little bit about the differentiating between judgment and like discernment? I think like you said something that made my ears perk up a little bit about reflecting on one's past actions and how they brought one to where you are today. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually finding that kind of helpful, in my life right now when I'm studying in my practice around and thinking about karma. And like when I think about where my suffering is and think about where my past choices and actions and thoughts about myself or actual deeds have actually kind of contributed to some of that suffering directly. And sometimes when I can see that or see pieces of it, has helped me make some different choices, and I get this like self-judgment can paralyze oneself, but I also do believe that like individually and also like culturally, I think it's helpful for us to judge and to discern like how our actions are related to harm that they cause. But I guess it's sort of maybe some semantics in there that would help me right now.
I'm glad you said that because I wasn't clear. You're right. It's discernment is hugely important, and maybe you've had the kind of experience with practice that I've had many, many times where something comes up in a meditation, some memory, or maybe while I'm washing the dishes, some memory of 20 years ago where I said something unskillful, and it's like, ouch, oh, that wasn't skillful. I'm discerning in that moment. And sometimes that, just as I reflected on that email I sent, I thought about it. Someone could read this. It's not skillful. Discernment is really important. It's what I want to be, what I was emphasizing to be careful of is like to say like, I don't know, say if we suddenly got, one of us got COVID and I got COVID and I said, well, what did I do to deserve getting COVID? Is that really skillful? And like, it's not really skillful. Maybe if I hadn't been wearing a mask, there's some discernment, like I didn't do things that were careful enough. But to try and figure out what are the 20, 30, 40 different things in my life that all might have led to this moment. Like, why do I deserve this? That doesn't seem beneficial. But the discernment is hugely beneficial.
Yeah, it's like deserving is almost like there's some higher power that's making this like good, bad, as opposed to like and more of a neutral, like you said, like you walk around without shoes on, your feet get dirty. It's like not really good or bad. There's no value judgment to it. It may not be what you want, but like your feet are going to get dirty. It's like COVID. You go to a party with 100 people at a small bar, it's not good or bad. It's just it's what happens, right? I guess it's sort of the difference.
Actions have consequences, and that's really helpful to reflect, because we become more sensitive, I think, to recognizing actions that at one time we might have thought were neutral, and then as we reflect on them through the eye of discernment, we see, that wasn't skillful, and then we make a deeper commitment to be more careful in the future.
Hey, John.
Hi, Jim. Good to see you.
Thank you. So I have a kind of a practice question, and I'm trying to find a way to verbalize it clearly. But I've been noticing during my meditations and during my day-to-day life, there's a lot of unwillingness to have things as they are, right? Whether it's the politics, the environment, the fires, the smoke. This guy here is sick right now. He doesn't want to eat anything. I really struggle with not wanting what is. And I'm noticing, I guess I've been noticing in my meditation that it's definitely adding to suffering. Like this, I cannot have this. This cannot be, and I can't be happy. And I also feel this kind of immense sadness with a lot of it, rather than outrage or anger. Often I fall into this kind of deep sadness around how things are. And so I'm getting kind of a feel in my practice of acceptance, but I think, I just seeing if you have any pointers or things in terms of really just working with that. I know there's a lot attached to it psychologically. I'm well aware of that too, that everything gets linked up to history and stuff that makes me more vulnerable to certain ways of going when things are bad. But there's just so much bad, one after another, after another, after another. It's really hard to get my stability, internal stability.
It is seems like, what a year, 2020, so many bad things. The distinction in the practice is between preferences and attachments. Like I would prefer, if we have a giant rainstorm, I would prefer that I not have hip and back pain that I do. There's lots of preferences. We all have preferences in life, but we can let go of attaching our fundamental happiness to those preferences. Kind of letting go of the attaching our happiness to outcomes is another way to say it. It doesn't mean that we still don't care. Like when I think you were pointing at your pet who is not eating. I'm not sure.
He's ill. He's been ill before. He's ill again.
You prefer to be healthy, and you're probably feeling compassion for your pet, and you're feeling concern, and that's very natural. But there's the possibility of being like a sense of calm and peace that we can bring in. We can let go of that contention. The contention of the reactivity in the mind is what we can let go of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure to get to Jason, who's had his hand raised for a while. Jason?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the talk. I definitely have to be honest that you definitely triggered me with a certain challenge around, I don't know, it felt very simplistic to a certain degree. And I'm someone who really is interested in complexity and how the world is actually much more complex than sometimes I feel that Buddhist thought wants us to consider. And I feel that one of the things that Buddhist thought does allow me to do is to kind of come back to the presence and to be present to the complexity that exists in the world. And so I have two responses. You made me think about, I read an article by Douglas Rushkoff, who is like a techno person, a critiquer, I guess we could say, commentator. And in his article, he was looking at COVID back in like April, and he was considering, he was saying that people are saying this is our karma for all the horrible things we've done to the world. And so now it's coming back on us. And he was saying he doesn't necessarily agree with that, but what he felt that the karma was more so that here we have maxed out the techno-capitalist kind of paradigm for ourselves of overdoing our bodies so much, of constantly trying to keep up with a capitalistic society that just demands and demands and demands of us. And so one of the ways that we oftentimes deal with that is through burnout and through getting sick. And so on some level, he's saying that that COVID is like this, big phenomenon of actually that the whole human body is sick from this capitalistic society, this techno-capitalist society. And so I thought that those were two interesting reflections in regards to this idea of karma, that we are sitting. I mean, those are two big questions, I think, for me about what is COVID, beyond just this virus, like what is it saying about our karma on some level? But then you also made me think of, I watched last night My Octopus Teacher on Netflix. And one of the things that he talks about is at the beginning, he talks about being watching these, out in the savannah, watching these two African hunters and kind of looking at the details that they pick up that he doesn't pay attention to at all. And how he kind of started to develop that in the water of actually looking at the environment that he was in a whole different way. And I'm bringing this around to the idea of, as someone who doesn't wear a mask all the time when I'm outside, because I understand that I can pay attention to public space and that I can keep away from you, and I want to actually breathe fresh air, that I also would like to put that out there as something that maybe those people that you are judging, maybe you need to be paying attention to what is their behavior. And it's not just that it's a political thing, oh my God, they're a Trump supporter, but that it's actually maybe they're paying attention to public space. Maybe they're not on their phone expecting everybody else to pay attention to them. So I put that out there. And then lastly, I just want to kind of come into this idea. What I thought was really beautiful at the end of that show was her death, the death of the octopus. But yet his attachment, his human attachment to his human narrative around her dying, rather than what I saw was this beautiful animal going through the cycle of death, of finishing a life. And I feel like that's something that in our society, in our medical model society, we can't allow ourselves any longer to die past a certain age. Like, it's not okay for us to die anywhere before we're 80 or 90. And I feel like there's something problematic in that. I feel like there's a complexity that we don't allow any longer for being human in this world, that we are animals too, and that we also have to pass as well, rather than maintain this attachment to our existence. So those are my complex views on karma.
I don't know. The thoughts you reflected, and is the earth protecting itself now? I don't know. And is what the karmic unfolding is the pieces from COVID? I don't know. And I'll say too, Jason, that I pull when I walk 5 miles, as I will later on, when I'm not near anyone, I pull my mask down too. And when I get 3 feet away from people, I try and remember to pull my mask up, and once in a while I forget too. And those people are probably like, what's that fool doing? He's not pulling up my mask. So I'm human. I make the mistake too. But I don't know. I appreciate your sharing, and there's different perspectives, and it is, as you started with, this is a practice of being present, of being curious. As Thich Nhat Hanh says, wisdom never arises from thinking. There's a value from thinking. We all need to be discerning and bring the thought process into the world, but the greatest wisdom comes from just being present, and the wisdom that emerges from awareness itself. And that's universal to all of the Buddhist lineages, the wisdom that doesn't arise from a thinking process. David, am I out on time?
Yeah, we want to wrap it up. Thank you very much, John, for being with us today and for your teachings and for the conversation. Really appreciated your time with us. And to everybody, thanks for coming. A couple announcements I'll put out there, and then if there's any others, people can add on. But Wednesday, every Wednesday is GBF has an online practice session. It's from 7:30 with 30-minute silent meditation followed by group discussion. And next week is an open discussion week and conversation. And we want to encourage people to make dana, to support the Sangha, to support the teachings, our newsletter. And so I'm posting the link directly to PayPal. You can also go to the GBF website, to the donate page. So please contribute to keep the work going. And are there any other announcements that people want to share? It's a quiet group today. Okay, well, I want to thank those who joined us for the first time, and for everybody for spending the Sunday together. And go ahead and do the dedication of merit. John, do you want to give the dedication?
Sure.
That'd be great. Thank you.
So, holding in our hearts all of the suffering that's present in the world with COVID, the people who have been impacted by it through sickness, through economic consequences, the pandemic of racism that's been here for over 400 years, fires, hatred toward those in our own LGBTQI community. I wish for the merit of our practice to be for the benefit of all beings, for the awakening of all beings, for all beings to open their heart to love, compassion, for all beings to be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May it be so.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. See you.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.